Cheers, my friend.
Cheers. My name is Andy Lane. I am the president of CFS Partners. We are a consultant in the industry. This is Craig McKesson. He is the Chief Customer Officer and now a new title of marketing at T5 Data Centers. And we are here at the American Club in Kohler, Wisconsin at the Kohler Power Down Summit, with the opportunity to speak with my privileged friend of over a long period of time, Craig McKesson.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah. So, a little bit about Craig. A little known fact. Out of the Air Force, undergraduate, graduate degree at
the University of Chicago.
Miami, undergraduate, and then into the Air Force.
That's correct.
And Craig, little known fact is that he was part of the team that built our current GPS system. Is that right?
That's correct.
And then going on from there, you came out and were in real estate for a period of time, and then were part of the original founding team at T5. Is that correct?
Not technically. The founding partners of T5 and I worked together closely at the Staubach Company. And then I joined them a couple of years later.
And then through essentially a pretty successful decade during T5 1.0, you were probably the epitome of a project management officer. In other words, whatever needed to be done, Craig did it.
The consummate utility infielder.
Sales, operations, customer service, new product when you got into co-location, because the organization really started out as a speculative developer, correct? And so Pete was into just we're going to develop and essentially sell what was your initial asset, and then got into buy leasebacks and then subsequently into operations, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we started out predominantly as a developer of wholesale data centers, space power cooling. But as the market evolved and as the emergence of cloud started to happen and the enterprise customers started to look toward a higher level of service and functionality within the data centers, we had to evolve with that. And so I spearheaded a team that brought kind of enterprise co-location services within to T5 at the time.
And so T5 flourished and grew into 10, 12 assets across North America, and then ended up kind of having your swan song and selling a couple of those organizations are now into kind of the T5 2.0 next decade of growth. And
yeah, that's correct. So we went through that period of growth, but what happened along the way is we actually evolved the company to what has really become really the industry's only full lifecycle data center services company. So starting on one hand with the development and leasing of wholesale data centers, but then have also developed a whole suite of data center services, starting with mission critical construction, so all of the downstream distribution, data hall fit outs, infrastructure upgrades, equipment procurement, all of that. We moved into sustainability with solar and renewable energy services as well, and then wrapped all of that around with a full-service facility management and operations group, which has really grown now to the point where we now operate upwards of 55 to 60 enterprise and hyperscale data centers on behalf of third parties around the country.
So it's a wonderful little segue, Craig. Thank you very much for the sustainability statement. So you kind of represent the operating companies. You have a variety of different assets, a lot of different locations around the country, and a lot of those were developed, not necessarily acquired, right? A couple of those may be acquired during the course of that, but they are all essentially legacy assets.
Yes, yeah. So we purpose built all of our facilities. We have done a few targeted sale leasebacks of purpose built data centers along the way, but the majority of our assets really have been greenfield.
So in the course of what Robbie Sobey's business, right, and construction management, and to your point, you've got all sorts of different businesses you've evolved into, which is a remarkable evolution given the sort of early sort of real estate mindset associated with the speculative development and sale. So it's a remarkable success story. But I'm curious, as it relates to the Power Down Conference and Going Green, the sustainability aspect. You've got sustainability services. So you might just talk about that for just a second, but also just as it relates to legacy assets, how is T5 sort of directing, managing, looking at what has been built a decade ago, essentially, and sort of how do you evolve those existing assets and facilities into more of a sustainable future?
Well, I mean, it really all starts out with the fact that the time for sustainability is now. And so we as an industry really need to embrace whatever it takes to take a look at whether it's a legacy asset or a new greenfield build-to-suit, how we incorporate environmental and sustainability initiatives into everything that we do, from the development and construction through to the ongoing operations of the facility. There's so many different avenues with which you can, reduce our carbon footprint, look at renewable energy sources, look at the way the infrastructure is installed, look at the way the data halls are laid out in order to maximize efficiency and lower your footprint.
Yeah. So is that sort of, how much of that is, and I know there's not like an accurate percentage associated with that, but how much of that is sort of internally motivated and directed, and how much of that is a function of, willing to kind of the requirement to meet ESG initiatives associated with a lot of your target customers? Because as a prominent build-to-suit development provider, real estate, which is very different than kind of the way the kind of business started back in the day, which was more of you were a large scale, large footprint co-location, but now it's a requirement. You've got pressure from a couple different angles coming at you.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's much more than a check the box item now on every RFP that we see. Sustainability is and corporate governance is very much a deciding factor.
Yeah.
I think what they do. If you look at what's going on in the hyperscale market right now, they have hard and fast sustainability goals and initiatives that really drive their procurement strategies and drive how they do business, both internally and externally with companies like ours.
Yeah.
And so that has also trickled down to the large enterprise customers that we work with, who are with a lot of financial services companies, as well as other technology companies as well. And sustainability is a big piece of that. So we as a company, and really, us as a data center industry, really need to embrace that and look for new, interesting ways to make all of that happen.
So on that note, you have all these timelines that are, essentially put out there and mandated, and some of the, I would call it, dueling views is that one, it's necessary, one, it's inevitable, and another is that there's a lot of, it's marketing. And some of the appeal associated with RFPs and that sort of thing being that there's a lot of hearsay associated with what organizations are really, really doing in order to support that. So has that become a real circumstance of competitive advantage that T5 has had to work on, and you as the customer officer, probably have to manage that message accordingly? But I would guess there's a drill down at some point to say, here's in fact what we're in fact doing, and do they have checklists associated with assuring that you're in fact delivering on those requirements?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I think, in years past, you could get away with saying that we're going to do power purchase agreements and RECs to buy sustainable energy from the utilities, where today you actually have to show it, right? So when we're answering an RFP, we are typically asked to show what are the generation sources of the utility that we're connected to. And so they want to see what that mix is today. How much of it is coal, how much of it is renewable, whether that's wind, solar, hydro, and nuclear as well.
And you're a unique organization in that you have a variety of different services that you offer, which has been a predominant part of the growth here from a facility management services standpoint. I didn't appreciate or understand that you've got actually a sustainability energy management practice, and you do that for your own data centers, but you also have this facilities management business, which is you oversee other organizations, data centers, other enterprise data centers, some of your customers who have co-location infrastructure assets with you, but you also care for their enterprise on-prem data centers. Is that right?
That's correct. When it comes specifically to kind of the energy management, we will be on the ground and work with in-house teams to manage that and make sure everything is working well. As it relates to our internal T5 data centers, as part of our site selection process, the generation mix and the utility mix is very, very important to us in our site selection decision. One of the things that we're also doing now, I mentioned within our construction services group, we have a solar and renewables group. And so all of our site plans, all of our site plans and all of our bills are really set up to allow for installation of solar arrays on the roof to provide direct offset of utility power with solar. We can do that either on the roof or if there's adjacent land to that as well. But it's really just another way that we can show our customers that it is real, and we have the option to provide them the solution that they need.
And how recent is that? I mean, that wasn't a part of the grand plan even 4 or 5 years ago. So you've had to pivot in order to provide that sort of development. Yeah, evolution.
Yeah, so it's something that's come from customer demand, right? I mean, we pride ourselves at really listening to what's happening in the marketplace, what our customers are looking for. Is again, we see it over and over and over where our customers are asking for different types of sustainability initiatives. Solar is one of them. We've also evolved our base mechanical and electrical designs as well to have much more of an eye toward efficiency and sustainability. We've gone to a closed loop waterless air-cooled chiller system on the mechanical side, right, to reduce water consumption. Really, it's almost a zero water type of solution there. On the electrical side, we're looking at ways to better utilize lithium-ion batteries, things like that as well. To reduce, some of the waste and recycling and stuff associated with older technologies.
So as a person responsible for marketing, you look at competition, you look at competitive advantage, you look at what other organizations are doing or not doing. Everybody's endeavoring to meet this, but there's going to be kind of not necessarily winners and losers, right? Some are not going to be able to achieve some of these initiatives, and I wonder if there's any forecast in your mind about where that's going to happen. What are going to be the hardest things for a service provider to be able to provide it, and whether or not the timeframes that are being put on you from the hyperscale and large cloud platforms are I don't want to call them unreasonable, but they're going to be more challenging to achieve than others in terms of the mandates they're putting out.
That's true. I think the biggest challenge that providers are going to see is keeping up with scale, right? It takes a lot of scale and a lot of resources and a lot of investment to keep up with the emerging technologies that are out there today. And so, you're already starting to see the capital markets shift with different financing specifically targeted towards sustainability initiatives, and assets that incorporate sustainability into them. And so that to me, I think, was a really interesting development because when you see the capital markets start to focus on those providers who are really, walking the talk, if you will, that's where the industry is going to end up going.
The infrastructure funds getting into the space are involved in different utilities and some renewables, and we see a trend toward somebody that has the ability to be fresh into the market, if you will, from a greenfield standpoint and develop entirely with renewables, which from an idealistic standpoint sounds, wonderful, but I would guess that there's going to be just the intrinsic challenges associated with pivoting from other businesses into what is a fairly complex and unique demands of the data center market. There's tons of other real estate organization investment firms that have gotten into this space and have ended up leaving. I'm just wondering what challenges are they going to face? Just you've been in this business now for 10 years. You've seen competitors, you've seen investors, you've seen organizations come and go. I'm just wondering what it is that keeps T5 out in front, if you will.
I think it really all starts with having kind of the right mix, in the recipe, right? And so what we saw there was the opportunity to really put a focus on the value-add services that really make a difference. It's one thing, on one hand, to build a great data center. It's a whole other thing to be able to operate it as well. We say we're forever on and forever safe, and that's really what it's all about. And so as we see a lot of new entrants into the marketplace, I think their biggest challenge is aligning with the right operations team to give them the credibility in the eyes of the customer. We like to say that the customers are handing the keys to the business over to us when they come into our data centers, and so we need to really accept that level of responsibility to make sure that we're doing everything we can, right?
Yeah.
That we're doing everything we can to make sure that their business stays forever on.
Right on. Right on. So, in the context of the genie, the data center genie,
Oh, the genie.
who in my mind is Bill Mazzetti, by the way. I always see him in the turban, the arms crossed. You go out in the back of one of your environments and rub on the gen set, and what do you use? Probably a Kohler gen set, and then a little puff of smoke, and he says,
In a perfect world, it'd be
I'm going to grant you, it would be in a perfect world. I'm going to grant you 3 wishes. And in this case, not just for the data center industry, because there's a lot that's evolving, and there are certain things that could happen holistically that would get us there sooner, or would advance the industry as a whole. We face all sorts of different challenges, primarily because of the capital required in order to do what you do. But in the bent of the power down summit here, what kind of things would you, 3 things that you get to wish for sustainability initiatives in the industry?
I think the time for this is now, right? So number one on that is continued transparency and partnership between the service providers as well as the end users. Mm-hmm. I think we're seeing the hyperscale really drive a lot of this now, which in turn has really pushed the service provider marketplace to do the same. We're seeing a lot of the demand coming from the enterprise as well. But I think to continue pushing the envelope, we're going to continue to need feedback and commitment from our customers to help drive it.
We're all in this together.
We're all in this together. And so, historically, there's been a lot of talk about sustainability, but customers, on the other hand, wouldn't necessarily be willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Today, we're starting to see that shift a little bit. But in order to really make some monumental gains, both in terms of adoption as well as technology, I think there needs to continue to be a symbiotic relationship between the manufacturers like Kohler, the service providers like us, as well, and the end user community.
That's right.
So, that's a really big and complex number one.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's pretty encompassing. It might encompass the other 2, but you still have to say the other 2.
Yeah, but I think that's really, where it starts. And then 2, it's it's going back to this collaborative environment of the service providers working with the manufacturers like Kohler to really dig into and understand what the customers are asking for and drive R&D around sustainability.
Right. How do you achieve it?
How do you achieve it?
Yeah,
right. And
from day one,
having service providers be willing to pilot different technologies as well, I think would be super important.
Right on. Number 3.
And then number 3.
We're stretching it.
We're stretching it. We're stretching it here on number 3.
We'll close it this way. Yeah. One more of these, and you have to come up with number 3. How's that?
Sure.
Inspired.
And then number 3, I think you just said it. It's meetings like the Power Down Summit, right?
Yes,
where you bring thought leaders together,
collaboration
from all facets of the industry. Whether you're, on Monday you're a competitor, today we're partners. That's kind of how you look at it, right? And so I think it really does come down to thought leadership experiences like this, where we can share ideas and really push everyone's thinking forward.
Craig McKesson, ladies and gentlemen, put up against the wall, fighting for number 3, and comes out with a highly marketing-oriented answer. Right on. Thanks for joining us, brother.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
As
Andy.
always.
That was a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you.